So what the fuck is cloud native? Who wants to take that first?
I can go first, so then everyone else can disagree with me. So cloud native, similar to DevOps, started as a collection of tools, but it has become more a collection of practices, even philosophy, if you so want, in how to work, think about, and distribute software.
I think that's good.
Right.
But I would describe it maybe perhaps slightly differently as just being a way of thinking about software where we think of it being deployed on the cloud as its primary way, or perhaps only way it is used. And to that extent, you need to think about things about this being a distributed app and how things are packaged up front as opposed to at the end of its life cycle.
I would say cloud native is probably the abstraction of the infrastructure layer to allow us to develop concentrate on developing applications in a more simplified and easily deployable way. You guys can also disagree with me now, right?
I gotta say, I love this. I love that we are talking about this from 3 different angles.
To me, the key point is easily deployable, right? And the main place you're going to deploy is the cloud, as opposed to on-prem. I mean, I guess I'm in the older people here, so I do remember, back in the day. Well, I mean, I used to originally, and I'm sure you did as well. You got your software on a DVD. Okay, the days of that are long gone. Then we started downloading stuff, but it was still like client applications running on your computer. And now we're in the world of SaaS, running on somebody else's server. So that's where I see cloud native sitting as a sort of evolution of deployment architectures.
Elastic on-demand resources is pretty cool.
I would also say cloud is leveraging open source majority of the time, and not doing the enterprise way of having bespoke software for your system or for your data center. And I think that's also a very important thing to comprehend, is you're no longer tied into your licensing fees and your this in order to or getting vendor locked in, right?
If I can add on to something, I think that's a very good point that you made with open source. I think an aspect of cloud native that I really like is kind of democratizing tech capabilities. Especially I'm seeing this with serverless, where people who have little to no experience with infrastructure and how to even distribute and deploy their software, they're fully capable of managing everything themselves because they can just upload their code from the machine. They don't even have to Dockerize it in any way, just directly onto the cloud, and it runs. And I think that makes it possible for a lot of people to publish things that they wouldn't have been able to do before because they didn't have the capabilities to do so.
Yeah. I also like this idea that cloud native is a global interface, right? I can achieve the same or similar results no matter where I'm running. And I think if you look at the people that are actually winning this race, the AWS, the Google Cloud, the Azure, they're a lot more similar than different. Like, they do have their differences, but they've got a lot of similarities. Whereas if you look at the people that are losing the race, they're just not as similar, or they don't offer these similarities that you're able to, say, oh, we could jump on Oracle for a bit and then jump back onto AWS. So standardized APIs, I think, are crucial in cloud native.
What do you think is the biggest problem with cloud native?
My biggest problem is what we've just shown is that it's quite a nebulous term, and we don't really have a good answer for what it is apart from and when that happens, the problem is it tends to end up being sales speak, which undermines everything.
Leanne, do you want to give it a shot?
You go first. I'll just correct.
Okay, all right. So my feeling with the biggest problem with cloud native is this legacy complexity, right? Is oftentimes the people trying to become cloud native are lugging around these heavy abstraction layers, these large applications, and they come to the idea of, oh, cloud native allows you to lift and shift, right? And I think that's the biggest misconception in cloud, is this idea that, oh, I'm running it on a VM in my basement. Now I can run it on a VM in the cloud, and it's just lift and, move it there. So I think the biggest problem with a lot of, or with cloud native, are these huge companies lifting and shifting, and they're taking their complexity from on-prem into cloud, and that's never going to work. So then they'll obviously have a bad experience, right?
Yeah. In the early days, we also talked about something called cloud bursting. Did you ever hear about that? And it's just the idea that, like, okay, you run on-prem. Let's say you need like extra stuff to deal with Black Friday or whatever. You can burst onto the cloud
Yes.
and suddenly scale up. And of course, that never really worked because, your infrastructure for your own, or the architecture for your own on-prem stuff is very different to what you need to run effectively in the cloud.
Yeah. I mean, it's a completely, and this kills me every time we hear it, is it's a completely different architecture that you set up, right? You're no longer worried about, long-lived servers, and a lot of applications that are built, pre-cloud, they're built to run on a single server that never dies, right? And I mean, we found this a lot with in Africa, with a lot of those enterprises that are even further behind, like Europe and America, where, I mean, you're so locked into the server that you're running on that there's it's a very difficult job to kind of move it, right? And then you get into this cloud thinking where your server should be able to die, and within minutes your system's somewhere else, right? Whether that's via Kubernetes or via, machine sets or however you want to do it. It's just this idea that nothing lives forever. I mean, a bit philosophical, but I think infrastructure should follow the same lines of every living thing, right?
I think that my biggest criticism towards, or not even criticism towards cloud, but problem is kind of going in the same direction, where I would put it like it's the problem when you do like the cloud transition, when you get the hardware update but not the software update. So you change your technology, but you don't change the way that you deliver your software, like how you package it, all those things. It's just like, it's marketing speech. Some CTO or someone from some team who doesn't necessarily understand all the ramifications hears something about Kubernetes at a conference, then convinces people to just do it. But then the people who actually have to work with it, who actually have to rethink, this is something that I'm seeing with clients literally every day, that the engineers are just being told, okay, now you have to containerize everything. But they don't know how, they don't know why, they don't understand what are all the good things that you will get once you do this. So to them, it's just a burden. It's just an additional level of, I need to do this now.
So you also see a lot of how they take their problems to the cloud, right? It's like, oh, we didn't update the server for 10 years. We haven't patched it, nothing. It's just been running in our on-prem. And then you're like, all right, well, when's the last time you updated your cloud VMs? Oh, no, Google does that for you. Yeah, they might do some security patches and stuff, but they're not going to update you from, I don't know, Ubuntu 16 to Ubuntu 18, right? That's completely on you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think some of the kind of hurt that companies feel is the learning curve of cloud. They haven't thought cloud yet, trying to get them to think cloud. And then when the stress stops to happen in projects, they go back to the old way of thinking. I think it's that learning curve of staying in the new way of thinking and making sure you don't fall back on old ways of doing cloud.
And what do you all think is sort of cloud native's underrated superpower?
I do think that with the cloud, or with cloud native, there's more conversation happening about the intersection of technology and culture, social responsibility, green cloud, all those things. And I think this is great. I think we haven't been talking a lot about these implications that technology has on society before. So maybe awakening people to, or especially engineers, to their to the consequences of what they're doing. That could be a superpower?
For me, it's turning engineers into scientists, right? Has an idea, and you're like, for me, the turning point for this kind of thinking was when I was at a client who it was literally taking us months to get any kind of infrastructure, and I said, well, I need to know if this works on this version of Linux, and it took me 5 minutes to go and test and whatever on my own dime. I mean, I spent my own money. I was like, I'm not waiting 3 months. I don't care how much I have to pay for that, right? And did it, and within like half an hour, I could email the client and say, look, your idea is not going to work, and they were shocked. I mean, this was a couple of years back, but they were completely shocked that I'd been able to test and prove that their idea wouldn't work in such a short amount of time, that even this started opening up conversations. How did you do that? How did you? And then you get to that as soon as the managers understand that allowing experimentation for your engineers and your developers is the number one thing that you need to kind of allow for, right? And if you're worried about the bottom dollar, like $300,000, euros, rands, yen, whatever it is, right? In the long run, if you spend that money allowing your engineers to play, you're going to get so much more out of them in the future, just because they've learned, they've tested, they've become battle hardened engineers, right?
Yeah, and I would go slightly further with that, because what I really love is that it levels the playing field, right? So previously, if you wanted to release like a large SaaS application or whatever, you had to be a big company. But now I can release a pretty in-depth application for a few pounds and run it on the cloud and only pay as I go. I don't have to buy like my own server and stuff. So
another superpower I was thinking of listening to Ren, is also the interfaces that cloud has allowed us to have. So now we can leverage all the code as infrastructure, code as anything, and we can we can version control the infrastructure, and that's pretty amazing. Cloud gives us those interfaces to do creative things with infrastructure.
What's it? What did I used to have a mentor who always used to say convention over configuration, right? Like this has become huge. So now we've got all these like very specific conventions that you don't have to configure much to get something running.
Yeah, I think that was like the Ruby on Rails thing. They really started that, and I guess Heroku maybe took it a little bit further.
Never been a Ruby dev, so I'm not surprised I didn't know about this.
Where's the Ruby community now? Because I feel like since the emergence of the cloud, I've seen less and less Rails and Ruby.
They all got hired by GitLab. All of them. All the good ones, anyway.
They all moved to Rust.
Engineer jokes.